All right, we are live. So thank everybody for joining us today. And I'm here with Aram from the Czech Republic, who is part of the diaspora from the Nagorno Karabakh War. So welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's really a great opportunity. I just want to thank you for joining me. It's tough to find people on both sides to kind of just talk about, give the kind of their personal perspective of the conflict and what's going on. Because recently, last month, it escalated a little bit, but it's kind of been a frozen conflict in time throughout the territory. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, how are you?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing well, but during the time it all started, it was very interesting to see that all happening. We were all thinking, like, what does this mean? And, like, is this going to evolve? Or, yeah, so.
Yeah, or just be a blip in the sand. So to get started, I just want to talk about some of like the modern history of the conflict, starting about the year 1900, going up to about 1994. So in about 1915, there was an event known as the Armenian Genocide, where some Turkish radicals went in and tried to eradicate all Armenians. Now, as far as like what I've researched, there weren't too many Azerbaijanis. It was more just the young Turks in Turkey trying to wipe out the Armenians. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
But as a result of that genocide attempt, Armenians kind of spread around the globe in what is known as a diaspora. And so after that, there was the diaspora, which kind of created a divide between the Armenian people and the Turkish people. There was a war that broke out between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And so during this conflict, Azerbaijan took a bunch of the territory that's in the Nagorno Karabakh, and then the Russians came in, walked right over the Azerbaijanis, and then walked up to Armenia and created kind of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting about that period with the Soviet Union was during that time, Armenians and Azerbaijanis lived together. Like, it's not really that case today, but they lived together in peace. They went to each other's schools. They kind of had a unified hatred towards the Soviets. So, do you know much about that history of the time under the Soviet Union with Armenia and Azerbaijan?
Well, first of all, I think that the USSR, when they did everything possible that leads to today's conflict. Because if there wasn't for USSR, there wouldn't be anything of this, probably. I mean, there were some conflicts between Armenians and Azerbaijanis, but it wasn't that bad. We could live next to each other with no issues, and then the Russians came in, and it all happened.
Yeah, they came in and they kind of redrew the borders of some areas too, like the borders of the Nagorno Karabakh area. They designed that so it contained a Armenian majority, so they could have control on Armenia and Azerbaijan socialist republics.
Yeah.
So at the end of the Soviet Union, there was a war. So first, I think Nagorno Karabakh designated itself as wanting to leave the Soviet Union to be its own country, then Azerbaijan, then Armenia, and as a result of a territorial dispute, they had a conflict, which is known as the Nagorno Karabakh War.
Yeah.
So what do you know, or what do you remember? 'Cause you're mentioning that you had family members that fought in that war of that conflict.
Yeah. Even before this war, I don't know, maybe about 5 years before the war, Azerbaijanis and Armenians still were friends, but you could already feel the tension that something big is going to happen. Well, and then unfortunately this war began, and I think that is that is still the main issue between Armenia and Azerbaijan, because if there wasn't for this war, none of this would happen. So yeah,
Yeah, for sure. And one of the consequences of the war was you had Armenians having to leave Azerbaijan and Azerbaijanis having to leave Armenia. So Nagorno Karabakh before this war was about 53 to 57% Armenian, and the rest was Azerbaijani. And during this war, they all had to leave. And so you had kind of a people leaving the areas and kind of creating two different ethno states, which people used to live together. You know, like you said, they didn't have problems, but they had peace. And so there was this issue was kind of the root of the conflict. They kind of created two pools of people who were polarized together. So you were mentioning like your family member fought in the war before we hopped on, like, and he was saying something why like that what could spark kind of the conflict there between the two sides.
well, if you are talking about like the small battles, like for example, the one that now happened, like 2 weeks ago, it was very easy to start something like this because Armenians and Azerbaijanis, they are very proud nations, and they take everything really seriously, almost everything. And so I know that few times happened that you could just get out of the trench and just scream something like on the Azerbaijani or Armenian side, like some insults or something like that, and that would be enough to start some little battle. So yeah.
Yeah. So it was just like some kindling that just needed something to pop it off in order for it to ignite. So at the end of the war, the UN made some resolutions, and I want to kind of get your thoughts on these resolutions made by the UN. So 822 called for the cessation of hostilities to withdraw from occupying forces
Yeah,
from Keljabar
Azerbaijan. Yeah,
and occupied areas of the Azerbaijani Republic.
yeah.
So what is your thoughts on that one?
Well, those resolutions are completely useless because those things just don't work. Maybe if United Nations sent uh, blue helmets, maybe that would have some effect instead of this. But nobody cares about some resolutions, to be honest. Neither Armenia and neither does Azerbaijan. So this is just, when something like this happens, United Nations can't just do anything about it. They just can't ignore it. So they came up with those resolutions, but it has no purpose, man, to be honest.
Now, do you think that these resolutions, if they were implemented, like if the United Nations actually went through and implemented these resolutions, do you think that it would have ended like the frozen conflict between the two sides?
I don't think so because uh, Armenians have already sacrificed a lot of blood to take this territory back. So I don't think this would solve anything. It would just, maybe the hate against Azerbaijanis would increase, maybe, or maybe Armenia would take to try Nakhchivan instead, but it wouldn't be any kind of good solution at all, I think.
Now, do you think the Armenians would try to take at some point Nakhchivan? Or are they just going to leave that? Because it is kind of a weird thing. Like, so Nakhchivan is kind of a autonomous zone that's really closer to Iran and than it is Azerbaijan.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if Armenia would try to take that. Well, it is possible, but that's too complicated question. It's just, but the main reason, well, I think it's not possible because when you look at it, Nakhchivan is the only way for Azerbaijan, like, to be in some contact with Turkey. So I think Azerbaijanis would fight really hard for Nakhchivan, and Turks would certainly help them, no doubt about that. So even if Armenia would try to take Nakhchivan, it's really difficult to say if it would be successful or not.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that's a great move at all. I think Turkey would come in and, yeah, that because of the Armenian genocide, the Turks and the Armenians aren't really good friends.
Not at all, man. And another thing is the war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. That's really enough. The last thing we want to happen is other countries to get involved, like, for example, Russia and Turkey and so on. This is really enough.
Yeah, because, I mean, those other countries getting involved, I don't think they necessarily care about Armenia or Azerbaijan. They kind of care about their own interest.
Yeah, just look at Russia. They are like prostitutes, to be honest. They sell Russia to Azerbaijan and to Armenia. They just don't care. Like, yeah, we are allies with Armenia, so what? They just don't care at all. This wouldn't solve anything.
Yeah, for sure. Now, one of the resolutions that I like as far as like ending this conflict is the Madrid Principles.
Mm-hmm.
And so here, I think one of the things that people don't understand is it's more than the Nagorno Karabakh. It's actually 7 territories of Azerbaijan and the Nagorno Karabakh. But I think this having a corridor link Armenia with Nagorno Karabakh and then returning some of those territories to Azerbaijan, it would require concessions from both sides. But I think this would be a good kind of peace resolution. What are your thoughts here on the Madrid Principles?
Well, the thing about having this corridor is I don't think that would work because sooner or later Azerbaijan would take it back, like the whole Karabakh, even with the corridor. Maybe they wouldn't send military, but, well, they would say that they are militias and they would supply them with weapons and so on. But they would say that we, as a government, we are not doing anything. It's just people are fighting. So what should we do? It's the same thing that Armenia does right now at all. Like, so.
Yeah. And one of the other things too I like about this is because like the people that got taken out of Armenia, the people that got taken out of Azerbaijan, could return back to their areas. Because that's one of the things I think for the ultimate solution, you'd have to have integration of Armenians and Azerbaijanis together. Because, yeah, Azerbaijan is a little bit more ethnic diverse, but they're like 91% Azerbaijani, and Armenia is 97% Armenian. But just having them integrate together back to where they were taken out because of this conflict. What are your thoughts about integrating Azerbaijanis into Armenia and Armenians into Azerbaijan?
Well, first of all, I think this wouldn't work because when you look back, for example, when Armenians were living peacefully in Azerbaijan, there were events like, for example, Sumgait pogrom, or or
back-
Kirovabat pogrom. Nowadays, Kirovabat is called Ganja in Azerbaijani, and
Yeah, there
or
was the Baku one too. The Baku
yeah,
pogrom.
yeah, there are many of them, and the another reason for this is they would they could attack some Armenians, and they would say, "Oh, this is a revenge for example, Kojali." Yeah,
Yeah,
just like with this is the same issue with Ramil Safarov, an Azerbaijani officer who killed an Armenian soldier during the NATO exercise in Hungary in 2004. He just killed him with an axe while he was sleeping. So,
and so with that story, just to kind of elaborate, he killed him with an axe while he was sleeping, was arrested, got extradited to Azerbaijan, and then Azerbaijan celebrated him as a hero.
yeah, exactly. The Aliyev was there. He congratulated him, and this is just another proof that Azerbaijan really spits in the face of all laws around the world. Because how come that? How can you make a killer the national hero? This is the one thing I really don't get, and I'll probably never understand. But that's just so ridiculous. I know it's propaganda, but I don't know, man. If killing a sleeping soldier is like an act of a hero, then I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough thing seeing that celebrate. I mean, some of the pictures of the conflict. There's the one social media video out there of an Azerbaijani soldier holding the head of an Armenian dead soldier. I mean, there was stuff on that in the Armenian side too, but they didn't post it to social media. Like this battle, like in 1994, was absolutely brutal. Like it didn't matter if you were a civilian or a soldier. If you were caught by the other side, you were going to die and you were going to be tortured. Like there was definitely a genuine hatred between the two sides.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I think the soldier, he wasn't even Armenian, he was Yazidi, actually. And the problem is, yeah, it was cruel as hell. I heard a story about once uh, my grandpa and like their division, they captured maybe two Azerbaijani soldiers, and then they left them. They didn't kill them. They just left them somewhere and went on. But as they were leaving, some Armenian soldier just asked them few questions and then just killed them. And the other soldiers asked, "Why did you kill them? Why did you kill them? It's just it wasn't necessary." And he said, "Well, our commander said all the Turks and Azerbaijanis must be killed." So this is the point of view that both sides has.
Yeah, and that's one of the very like difficult things about this conflict is that hatred that both sides kind of have for each other, which makes it really difficult for finding a resolution. And I find it interesting. Like, I think these people, like, if they can get over that hatred, they can get along because in Iran, they get along side by side. In Georgia, as you mentioned on the pre chat before we came on, they get along as well. You were mentioning, like, there were Azerbaijanis that went to Armenian schools in Georgia.
Yeah. Uh, this is, I don't know if this can be ever done. In Armenia and Azerbaijan, they say we just can't forgive them. So it's difficult, but when you look like behind the borders, for example, 2 weeks ago, we have a kebab restaurant here in my city, and it's owned by some Azerbaijani guy. And I reached out to him and asked about his political opinions. And to be honest, yeah, I'm Armenian, he's Azerbaijani, but we shaked hands, and this it's just not necessary. This hate, it doesn't have to be there.
Now, what do you think the root is of all this hatred between both sides in this conflict?
Well, from the point of view of Armenian, I think pogroms in Sumgait, Baku, and so on. And as an Azerbaijani, there is really strong propaganda in Azerbaijan. And people in Azerbaijan are just brainwashed daily that Armenians are killing, I don't know, dozens of civilians and so on. So it's just sure Azerbaijanis are going to hate Armenians if they hear stuff like this every day for a very long time. It's just, yeah, I get it. But to be honest, I don't blame Azerbaijanis because it's not their fault. It's the fault of the government.
Now, do you think there's the same style of propaganda in Armenia, like from the Armenian government?
Well, there must be some, but certainly not that strong. And plus, I think even with the casualties and so on, Armenia has no reason to lie about those things. Not a single one. But Azerbaijan can say whatever, pretty much whatever they want, because nobody has how to check them if they are saying actually true or no. So, well, but I think in Armenia there certainly is some, but not that much of it.
Yeah, you brought up the casualties. This is the casualty report from the 2020 conflict. So, like the Armenian side, they claim 5 of their soldiers were killed, 35 injured, and Azerbaijani claimed they killed 120 Armenian soldiers.
Yeah, that's it. This just proves my point.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things. Like, I mean, it would be tougher to fight kind of the Azerbaijani claim because they don't really communicate well with the other side. But even on the other
Yeah.
side, like 12 Azerbaijanis killed, and then Armenia claims 21, and then 13 UAVs downed and 3 tanks destroyed.
Yeah, but the funny thing about this is that I've seen few videos on YouTube, and you can see a few Armenian soldiers, and behind them there is this tank with an Azerbaijani flag. And now, honestly, do you think that the Azerbaijani government would say something like this ever publicly, that, oh, Armenians captured our tank? Never, never.
Now, do you think the Armenians, if the Azerbaijanis did the same thing, had a tank there, do you think they would kind of lie or passively put that by that didn't happen?
Well, if they were, first of all, I think that Armenians would have rather destroyed the tank than give it to Azerbaijan army.
Okay.
And if something like this would have happened, it depends on the government. Right now, with our prime minister, probably, well, I believe so, because he's trying to achieve the freedom of press and people. So he shouldn't lie at all.
Yeah, and
But
going on with that prime minister, let's talk a little bit about the 2018 Velvet or Color Revolution in Armenia, because there's actually a movie that's going to be coming out by Serge from System of a Down. that's going to showcase kind of his rise from like being gelled, being a journalist, and then rising all the way up to prime minister. So what are your thoughts on the way that kind of resolution developed and the way it was kind of implemented?
Well, first of all, I just want to mention the movie because I really didn't know about this, and wow, I'm really surprised. But about the thing about the Velvet Revolution is, I'm really glad it happened, and I'm glad it was Velvet, because I believe without Sarkisyan and with Pashinyan, it's going to be better for Armenia. I really believe so. I believe in Pashinyan and Sarkisyan. Well, he was pretty much the same as Aliyev is right now. He was corrupted, and at least there was a little bit of democracy in Armenia, but I'm just glad that he's not there anymore.
Yeah,
And
it was quite unique because they tried protests in 2008, 2010, and they were all met with force. Like, yeah, the protests did not last long.
and so did they. Like in 2018, there were police riots like everywhere, but they finally achieved what they wanted. So that's the main thing. This is what really actually matters. So
Yeah, and it's a good step in the right direction, but they're kind of faced with the problem is some of the same people that were in government power are still there. They pretty much just changed the prime minister. Like there's still a lot of work to do there on the ground level to kind of boost everything in this resolution.
yeah, no doubt about that. But the good thing is that those people that need to be like they are those people are just losing their power in the country while Pashinyan is the prime minister, and that's certainly a good step for Armenia.
Yeah, and it's opened new doors to Armenia too, because I know Germany's been a country that's been helping out in the EU, especially with like funding, trying to boost their economy.
Yeah,
Passignon said he wants to increase the tech sector in the country. So really, if Armenia can get this conflict resolved, like the country's only going to go up and up. So this leads me kind of to the next point, kind of the foreign policy of kind of Armenia and what they're looking to accomplish. And so here's a image of kind of Azerbaijan's friends versus Armenia's friends. Now, the Russian one's not really accurate because they play both sides. But
neither
I mean,
is Georgia.
yeah, Georgia plays both sides as well too. So, but Pakistan, which Pakistan is one of the leading exporters of like jihadists in the globe.
Yeah,
Same with Turkey. Then you have Israel, and Israel's one of the most like technically advanced, supreme, undercover military operations.
yeah,
Ukraine, which is still fighting with Russia. And then you look at Armenia's side. I mean, Greece is a good ally because they hate Turkey.
yeah,
But you have Iran, which Syria, which yeah, those are kind of tough sells for here in the West, especially Iran and Syria.
yeah. Actually, it's pretty accurate.
And Serbia as well. Serbia is a tough sell as well. Anybody who knows about the Balkan region, Serbia is kind of a bad player there.
We know about that here in Czech Republic.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I agree. Maybe except Russia isn't that much of an ally for Armenia because, like I said, it sells guns to everyone. But Palestine, Lebanon, and so on, yeah.
Yeah, and Russia still has an air base there in Armenia. would there be a chance with the kind of the new policy that Passignon that they eventually, maybe in lieu of either Germany or the United States or another country, get rid of that airbase, becoming an ally with the West?
Well, the thing about this airbase is it's important, but unnecessary at the same time. Because maybe if there wasn't for this airbase, Turkey maybe would have already invaded Armenia. But at the same time, if we want to move forward and be more friends with West, like I don't know, French and so on, we have to get rid of it. To be honest, from my point of view.
Now, would getting rid of it be like getting an application to join NATO?
I think it would be good, but the problem is Armenia certainly won't join NATO until the Nagorno Karabakh conflict is resolved. So,
Now, how do you think it can be resolved?
this is probably the most difficult question to me. Well, maybe I think a really good step forward was uh, Bishkek Protocol. It basically Bishkek Protocol means status quo. So that, well, I know it's not the best option for Azerbaijan, but Azerbaijan needs to understand the history. Like, I mean, how come that Aliyev claims, uh, I think in 2014, probably, that it's time for Azerbaijanis to get back to Yerevan. I mean, how can you say something like this? He says, well, historically, it's our territory. If you look back to history, there was no Azerbaijan back then. When it's just, I don't know, it's ridiculous. Same thing with how can you say that, how can you threat to someone to hit their nuclear power plant with the missiles? This is terrorism, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, hitting somebody's nuclear power plant is not a great thing. Yeah, there's the history aspect is really interesting to me because there were times like looking up kind of the genetic makeup of Azerbaijanis, like the northern part, they're more related to Armenians, Georgians, Chechens. The southern part, they're Persians, more
Yeah,
related to Iran. But that's kind of the way the Turkic people eventually came to power. They came as conquerors and rulers, kind of like the Mongols. But that region, you had the Persian Empire, you had the Ottoman Empire, you had the Byzantine Empire, like, and then I believe there was somewhere in there, kind of the Albanians came over as well. Like, there's a really long kind of mixed history of that region because it's been so resource rich that countries like Russia or the Persian Empire want to take advantage of that region.
yeah. Uh, the history is really complicated to me because so many things happened so that you can even, I don't know, man, it's really difficult to know something about the history.
Yeah, because even like the mixing of words, because I think isn't Artsakh a Turkish word? Isn't it derived from the Turkish language?
Well, Artsakh, I'm not sure about that, but actually, I think Karabakh means black gardens in Azerbaijani. So, and then Azerbaijan says, well, Karabakh, it's an Azerbaijani word. What more do you want? So, but well, it's just this whole negotiation process is totally useless.
Yeah, but I think it needs to happen to prevent another war, because this war is not going to be like your conventional like military versus military. Civilians are going to get in the way because neither side showed in 1994 that they're willing to not target civilians. So it'll
Yeah,
be bloody World War I trench warfare, because Armenia is going to fight to the last man. They're going to use guerrilla
exactly,
tactics, and so
exactly.
but Azerbaijan has the military equipment, and so they can make it extremely bloody. They may not be as good of fighters as the Armenians, but they can definitely make Armenians regret going to war with them.
Yeah, I agree. But there are certain things that, yeah, the military budget, that's a threat to Armenia from my point of view, because Azerbaijan spends really a lot of money on its military. And like you said, even though I think Armenians are better fighters than Azerbaijanis, but the equipment definitely will show up. But then, when you I don't know, for example, Americans in Vietnam, when you just compare the two armies and then you look at the result, you would be surprised too. But actually, if there's a war, maybe if there's just Armenia and Azerbaijan involved, I wouldn't be afraid, to be honest. But it would be worse if Turkey and Russia and so on would start to get involved. That would be worse.
Yeah, for sure. But I think rather than Vietnam, I think Afghanistan, because it is very mountainous, is a very good kind of example of like how much people that live in the mountains can affect a superior military power.
Yeah,
So yeah, but you mentioned the nuclear power plant. If it's a total war, then that's in fair game. And then on the other side, there's blowing up the dam in Azerbaijan, which would be
yeah,
fair game in the conflict. Now, Armenia generally gets all their weapons from Russia, Azerbaijan, Russia, a bunch of the Western countries, and then Israel. I think the Israeli weapons are probably the highest technology weapons that they get. And so, like, it would be a very tough situation. I think it really needs to be resolved. Now, just getting into kind of other countries that could potentially get in, Turkey and Pakistan have taken the side of Azerbaijan. Now, what do you think if the war broke out? Turkey and Azerbaijan, or Turkey and Pakistan, would bring into the conflict?
well, Pakistan, I think nothing maybe except for a few empty words. But Turkey, it would be worse. To be honest, if Turkey would get involved, uh, Armenia would probably rely on its allies. And I think that at least, and like I said, I'm not that big fan of Russia, but I think Russia wouldn't leave us alone. And that's the same thing with Iran and even Greece, Lebanon. Well, actually, Armenians helped so many countries when they were at war. For example, Asala helped Lebanon army when they were fighting against Israel. And at the end of the day, that's why Israel is on Azerbaijani side because of this. So I don't want to say that few countries owe us something, but they have a few reasons why should they help us.
Yeah. And I think Turkey's probably the biggest fear in the area because they're the ones that committed the Armenian genocide. like there's a lot of fear in this conflict, because Azerbaijan relatively was out of it. It was the Young Turks and Turkey that came in. But the fear that if Turkey goes in, like what they're doing to the Kurdish peoples in northern Iraq and Syria, is going to be the same thing they're going to try to attempt to do in Armenia.
Yeah, exactly.
But the other thing too, I was just going to bring up. So Pakistan is an exporter of jihadists, but also Lebanon has Lebanese Hezbollah, Iran has the Quds Force, Syria. There's the Assadists there. Like it's
Syrian.
Go ahead.
Syrian army is, very tired from the war with ISIS. But on the other side, now they are really well trained and prepared for any war. Unfortunately, they already are in another war with Turkey. But yeah, Syrian army is good, and so is the Iranian special forces, the Quds. So
yeah, one of the issues, you start putting Iran and then Syria in there, then America's probably going to stay out because they don't want to be on the side of Hezbollah and the Quds Force in Iran because they're natural enemies, and then Syria as well. They don't like Assad, so it'd be a tough thing because those allies are generally anti-American.
yeah. Well, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
But I mean, at the same time, like America doesn't like what Turkey's doing, where they're sending Syrian mercenaries into Libya or other parts of the world. So, yeah, it would be a tough sell for, I think, America to get involved.
Yeah, I'm really not sure about America, but like you mentioned earlier, Armenia would really fight like until the last man, because everyone knows that if something happens, something starts again. If Turkey gets into Armenia, the genocide is going to happen again, and no one's going to allow that as long as they are alive. So
yeah, for sure, that's going to be bloody.
yeah.
But yeah, Turkey's a rough one because they have a large military. They have decent technological advantages. Like they're not a nation that anybody wants to go into a direct 1v1 battle with. But they do have that history of the genocide, which could make this conflict even more complicated than what it already is.
Well, the genocide could be a good reason for some countries to get involved. Maybe, I don't know, the blue helmets from the United Nations would have go there, or I don't know what exactly would happen, but I think something would be done.
Yeah, I think it would be probably more of kind of a peacekeeping operation.
Yeah.
And then they would probably decide to try to do more resolutions to at least have a ceasefire, prevent them from start fighting, and then try to get them together to talk about a resolution to the conflict. The status quo is not something that I think is going to fly with Azerbaijan because, they have a diaspora of people there that used to live in Armenian land. So, that's kind of where they're motivated at. And then Armenia, of course, we took this territory. We want to keep it.
Yeah. Like, to be honest, Armenia has not a single reason why it should withdraw from Karabakh.
Which, I mean, both sides are going to have to make concessions at some point.
Yeah.
Like it's a tough thing. Because like you said, there's over 1 million people that got displaced from the conflict in 1994. 700,000 Azerbaijanis and then 400,000 Armenians. And they exist peacefully elsewhere. So I think there has to be at some level some peaceful resolution to this conflict.
Well, like I mentioned, my Azerbaijani friend that owns the restaurant. When we talked about this, he said, "Yeah, like we pretty much agreed on probably everything." And he said he thinks that Pashinyan is willing to, he's doing steps forward to resolve this somehow. He said that now the problem is on Azerbaijani side, which means Aliyev. And I pretty much agree because Pashinyan is, he really is willing to solve this somehow.
Yeah, he's definitely made the rhetoric that, you know what, we need to resolve this conflict, but he hasn't really specified how. Like he's just said, yeah, we got to resolve this. We got to get Azerbaijan together. We got to resolve this conflict without going into too much detail, like how you would resolve it.
Yeah, man, because this war is the last thing the whole region needs. It the whole region needs to grow economically and so on, and those things just can't be done while there's a war. So
Yeah,
I think everyone wants to end this as soon as possible.
I agree with that because I think it's in Azerbaijan's best interest and Armenia's best interest
Yeah,
economically and for the people because there's a lot of poverty in both countries
it is.
that,
It is.
that you could take some of that military budget because if this war ends, you know, Armenia will still have to keep some to a certain extent to keep Turkey away. But Azerbaijan, their foreign policy, they don't really have many enemies other than Armenia.
Yeah.
So they could take that military budget, those billions of dollars, and theoretically, I know it is a dictatorship, it's a corrupt, but theoretically take that money and then provide it to the people to reduce some of the poverty levels.
Yeah, man, this is pretty much what's happening. For example, in Baku, when you look at Baku, it's I think it's beautiful city, but the question is, how does the rest of Azerbaijan look like? Because this is the same thing with Armenia. Yerevan is pretty nice, but the rest of Armenia is, it's not looking that good because while Serge Sarkisyan was president, whole country was totally corrupted, and this led to this poverty that there is right now.
Yeah,
And this is the same issue in Azerbaijan. So
yeah. I mean, there were stories in Armenia with suitcases full of money exchanging hands. Like the corruption was that bad, they would do it in broad daylight. And yeah, Azerbaijan, like I said, it's really a dictatorship and domestically isn't very good.
it
But
is dictatorship, man.
there's so much potential in both countries that if they can get over this conflict, I think both of them can excel in the world.
Exactly, man. Exactly. And it's in the best interest of both countries. So
Yeah, it's just not in the best interest of Russia.
Russia and Turkey.
Ah, for sure. So I do have a few questions. So criticisms from the Armenian or the Azerbaijanis as far as the Armenian position, if you could address, like, there's been some like pan Armenianism. So like the whole area is Armenian, it's not Azerbaijan. Like this is the kingdom of Armenia. Is that something that's just somebody just trolling online, or is that like a legit philosophy? Like the whole area should be dominated by Armenia.
Well, uh, first of all, we all know this just can't be done. And second of all, this depends on how deep do you want to go into history? Because, uh, I mean, even during the times when Armenia was the biggest, during the Tigranes the Great. I mean, like about probably 80% of Azerbaijan's territory were Armenian. But if you would have, if you wanted, if you want to uh, make, if you want to make Armenia the greater Armenia again, it means you can't take just like few parts of Azerbaijan. You have to take part of Syria, Turkey, and Georgia, and so on. And this just is if someone is calling for this, he's calling for the same thing that Azerbaijanis do, like let's take back Yerevan back and so on. And that's just totally that's nonsense to me.
Okay.
So
Yeah, it's very unrealistic, but yeah, it's just one of the things. The next one's the Koleje massacre. Now, I've heard some denial that this occurred from some of the Armenians, and even like Pashinyan himself kind of brushes it to the side, doesn't want to direct it. Now, what are your thoughts on the Koleje massacre?
well, the thing about this massacre is, first of all, I'm glad you're calling it a massacre because a lot of Turks and Azerbaijanis are calling it a genocide. And if you are calling an event where about 600 of people were killed, I mean, yeah, it is massacre, no doubt about that. But how come you are calling this a genocide and then you try to deny what happened in 1950?
Yeah, I mean,
Second of all, yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your point.
Okay. And the second of all, a lot of people are denying that because people are saying that maybe Azerbaijanis did them by themselves. Because during the time of that massacre, there was this president called, wait, yeah, Abul Fas El-Chibay, something like that. And after this massacre, they just overthrew him, and then Aliyev's family started to rule the Azerbaijan, which lasts till today. So some theories say that this all was planned to because Turkey wanted to get the right man into the right spot.
Okay, so it was, kind of like the Russian report saying, well, the president of Azerbaijan basically said it was kind of a false flag operation. Like, that is one argument I've seen, but from what I can gather, what I can tell, some of the images and stuff, like, it is something that did occur. Now, as far as like it being a genocide or a massacre, like, the definition of genocide does kind of fit a little bit, but I think it's more of kind of a massacre because it wasn't it was 600 people, which is absolutely travesty, but it wasn't in the thousands, the 100,000s, the millions.
Exactly, man. And so when you decide to call this event a genocide and then you deny something like Armenian genocide when like there were about 1.5 million people killed, then you are just spitting into face like of those victims.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This is something I don't know. You know, now there's this city in Turkey called Izmir, but it used to be Smyrna, and this happened in I think 1922, and it's called the Great Fire of Smyrna. And in this, there were about thousands of Armenians and Greeks killed. How come nobody talks about this? You see like people protesting with like shadows, and they have written on it, "We demand justice for Khojaly victims." Okay, but how come you don't recognize events like this, like Armenian genocide, Sumgait pogrom, Baku pogrom, and so on? it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, as far as like it's one of those things like the Germans don't deny the Holocaust, and they're better for recognizing that it happened so then it doesn't happen again. But the denial
Exactly.
of like these events, like I've even seen like the Coolidge massacre is absolutely horrific. Some of the stories there, like it is something that Armenians should just say, well, that's something that we did. We're not proud of it, but it was something we did during the time of war. And then the same thing with the Azerbaijanis and the Turks saying, well, the Armenian genocide did happen. We're not going to make excuses. It did happen. It's a black spot on our history, and we want to prevent it from not happening again. But it'd be harder on the Turks because they're trying to commit a Kurdish genocide right now. But that's
Exactly.
not the topic we're talking about. So
Yeah, but the thing about those Turkish people is uh, actually even in those comment sections, I see like a lot of people from Turkey to write something like Armenia and Turkey are friends. Sorry for 1915, and I'm like really impressed when I see something like that, and I'm even willing to forgive, not to forget, but to forgive. So I believe that there are people in Turkey that know that what happened was bad, but they are just not able to talk but because of the government, because Erdogan is just another dictator. Wait, it's just I was reading this. Some girl commented something about the Armenian genocide. She was from Turkey. She was some student, and she wrote down like her opinion on all this. And she said that in Turkey, when you have a history lesson, uh, the teachers spends about 10 minutes saying something about the genocide, and the rest she she talks just about like why it is a complete nonsense and why it didn't happen and so on. And this is the root of the problem. Turkish people just have people, and so the government. They just have to like apologize for this. Look at the German and Israel relationship. It just Israel just forgave them. So I don't know why the same thing couldn't be done here.
yeah, I don't know why either, but it's there's a lot of other genocides. I think of Holodomor in the Ukraine done by the Soviets. Like they deny that occurred as well. Like it's one of those things in politics that I think it would be better if you just accepted that it happened, apologize for what that happened, and then
Exactly.
try to move forward. Because
Well,
that at the end of the day, you're just fighting a battle. I know, like the diaspora of Armenia, that's one of their main things is getting the recognition of the genocide out there.
yeah, exactly. Plus, to be honest, I can see why Turkish government doesn't want to apologize. So,
Yeah, it's a tough thing. Like it should be recognized by all nations. Like it was absolutely horrific what happened during those events, you know, and you have to move forward. Like there's a reason why, there's more Armenians outside of Armenia than there are in Armenia, and that's from the diaspora from the Armenian genocide.
true. Plus, even worse, it's happening again in Syria right now. And the world is just watching the Kurds fighting this fight that they just can't win. And I don't know, it really pisses me off to see things like this.
Yeah, it's difficult times. I mean, there's foreign policy is very complex. What you can do, what you
Yeah,
cannot do, who you want to piss off. It's about avoiding getting into a massive world war. But at the same time, there's a lot of humanitarian interventions that can be conducted around the world to help out groups of people, and then holding countries accountable for the actions that they take and the actions that they make.
Yeah, plus everyone has their own interests, so it's not easy thing, man, I know.
Yep. All right. So the last question I have as far as like a criticism. So Armenia wants Nagorno Karabakh to be autonomous, in essence, its own country, but yet it still supplies troops, such as the prime minister's son, to fight there. Like, if they want it to be autonomous, it should be self-governed and that, but they're kind of just, I guess, using that as an excuse for they
Yeah.
should, because they really, I think, just want it to be part of Armenia rather than it being an autonomous zone, but they're using it as an excuse because of the history of it declaring itself a free area from the Soviet Union.
Well, yeah, but uh, I see it really like just an excuse because, you know, I don't know, this is happening all around the world, whether it's Russia or, I mean, you just could go on like forever. So I think this is just some weak excuse, but it's not that much of a criticism. This is, to me, this is a normal thing. Like when some state has some interest somewhere and there's a military conflict, they usually send military support in that area. So
Okay.
this
So,
is how I see it, probably.
so from what I understand, you have a few questions for me.
Yeah, man. I'm really wondering, uh, how did you get interest in this conflict and so on?
So it's actually really kind of a funny story because I used to joke about like fishing in the Caspian Sea because I like to fish, and
Yeah.
they have the beluga sturgeon, which can get up to 2,500 pounds. And then this conflict kind of blew up right in your face because I knew a little bit about it, but then the conflict blew up, and then I started researching because like before I was just joking, I'm going to go to Azerbaijan and just fish in the Caspian Sea for sturgeon.
Yeah.
And then it blew up. I'm like, oh shit, there's something going on here. I want to research. Wonder what's going on. And then of course you have the Call of Duty level that was in Azerbaijan as well. So yeah, just kind of a weird kind of how it tied in there about joking and fishing and playing a Call of Duty level.
Cool. And well, the second thing is, it's not that much of a question, but I just really wanted to say thank you for being interested in those things and trying to, so more people can know about what's happening and so on. That is, to me, that's really important, and it's one of the little steps to like how to resolve this conflict. When more people will know about this, it's just good.
Yeah, because I mean, you can get political pressure on both sides because
Yeah.
as Azerbaijan can get political pressure because their pipeline runs into Europe. But it would cause Europe to buy more Russian oil, which they already do. But yeah, they can get some pressure there. Armenia can get pressure to resolve the conflict, or the EU is not going to send them that aid. The United States, can send neither aid as well. If more people knew about it, like I think there could be international pressure, just have them sit down, get together. It may not benefit 100% both sides, but if there's political pressure on both of them, it's going to be more advantageous for them to solve the conflict.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, more people need to know about this. But unfortunately, now there are those clashes all around the world, in London, Brussels, even in Prague, and so on. But unfortunately, this is the worst way, like how to letting people know about this. So, well, we'll see.
Yeah, there's been like after the initial conflict, there's been more violence
Yeah,
extranationally than inside
exactly.
inside the country, and it's some of those videos of people getting beat up and stuff like that. So yeah, they're absolutely awful. and that kind of behavior
Yeah.
needs to stop because it's not helping out anyone. Like protesting, going in front of an embassy peacefully is a good way to kind of get people to Google and research a conflict, especially when they see flags they may not recognize and wonder what these people are out there protesting for.
Yeah.
But when it becomes violent, you cross that line, and then people just see you as kind of like thugs or out there
Yeah.
trying to.
And at that moment, it completely loses the purpose. So,
Yeah. And so
well,
go ahead.
yeah, I mean, every time, like one side accuses the other, and you never truly know who really started it. And it's not just in those clashes; it's even in the front line. But my point is, if according to Azerbaijani sources, uh, the main aggressor is Armenia. If it's so, why don't you guys want to have cameras like in the borders? That's just one thing I don't get. If Armenia is the aggressor, then it's just good for you to have something to prove that. Like, for example, those CCTVs. So,
Yeah, more press on the border is, I think, would be a good thing at getting more kind of imagery, more news media. But
yeah,
those reporters got to be careful because
of course,
they
man.
they will probably get hit at some point.
Yeah, but this is another interesting thing. When you search like some videos from the front line, uh, all of them are from the Armenian side. Well, for example, BBC. I personally haven't found any video of like from the Azerbaijani side. It seems like, I don't know, maybe Azerbaijan really isn't letting any media in their country except for their own. So this is bad thing too.
And I think there's one of the issues behind that is they're worried. So Turkey historically has had like a military coup pretty much on schedule every like 4 to 8 years or so. And I think they're worried about the same thing in Azerbaijan because in '94, the Grey Wolves, right wing terrorist group, tried to oust the president of Azerbaijan, and there's been other coup attempts. So I think it's one of those things maintaining power. But I also think it's not the greatest idea because those people will get hit by rounds from both sides too. So
Yeah,
but yeah, it would be good, even if it's just like a string of like cameras attached to light poles on the border, like just so you can see some of the footage.
yeah,
I, I know Bellingcat does some satellite imagery as well. Like there's more of kind of that nowadays, and all these eternal conflicts where they look at satellite imagery, see if what cars were hit, what buildings were hit. But yeah, there needs to be more information of what's actually going on the border and the ground lines. Because I know as an
yeah,
American, I can travel. Well, not right now because of COVID. I can travel to Azerbaijan. I can travel to Armenia, but I'm not allowed to go to Nagorno Karabakh
yeah.
under like the visa requirements.
I don't know, man. With those news, you can never be like 100% sure because it's so confusing and there are even those fake news. It's really complicated to figure out to what you can trust and to what you can't trust.
Yeah, and hopefully, like I said, both countries can find a peaceful resolution because this war would be brutal. So, do you have any closing comments?
Well, I certainly hope it will get solved somehow. But if there has to be war, like Azerbaijan claims, if there is just Azerbaijan and Armenia involved, I'm not afraid. But if Azerbaijan wants war, it will not be nice.
Yeah, yeah, it's not going to be a nice war. Well, thank you, Aram, for joining me today. I think this
Man,
was
thank you for having me once again. I'm really glad I went through.
it was a really good discussion on just kind of
Yeah,
the Armenian side of the perspective. And so,
thank you, man.
thank you. And to everybody out there, have a good day.